All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Jó napot kívánok, üdvözlök mindenkit! Néhány percet még várni fogunk a megérkezésére az embereknek, addig pedig az előadóink látszanak már a képen mai napon. Én leszek a technikai személyzet, aki fel fog konferálni mindenkit, egy kis türelmet kérek mindenkitől. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar. Will be a technical staff. We'll wait for a couple of more minutes for all attendees to arrive. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar. I am your technical staff. The webinar will be held in English. Just to give you some brief information about the tool you are viewing now. You will be able to ask questions in writing and in wording as well, depending if you're from desktop or from mobile. As you can see on the screen, you can send chat questions to the organizers, that is me, and some background stuff. And you can also raise your hands and ask questions in wording. That is done through raising your hands. There is an icon for that that is visible on your screen. The raise hand icon. That you push, and then we will unmute you and you can ask your questions. And now I'm giving the word to Thomas to welcome you all and to start the webinar.
Thank you very much, Tibor. And first of all, a very warm good morning to everyone online, to our panelists and participants of this exciting seminar. My name is Thomas Dramitz, and I'm the president of the Swedish Chamber of Commerce in Hungary. We're now celebrating our 25th anniversary of commitment to the Swedish business community. And as we look around, there are about 130 Swedish companies here in Hungary, and we create roughly 20,000 jobs together. As a chamber, we're very proud to be representing some of the world's leading companies within the respective sectors. We have cutting-edge science companies that are exploring the frontiers in advanced technology. We have very well-known retail companies bringing world-class customer experience. We have companies who are literally building all over Hungary, and we have companies who are bringing their knowledge base and expertise into fruitful partnerships across Hungary. And in the next few months, we will invite all of you to celebrate with us the innovation that these companies have provided over the past 25 years. So more to follow on that. It is probably very true that none of us have ever experienced the turbulence that we're currently seeing. The economic foundation is shaking across the globe. There are massive impacts on people, on companies, and on countries. And the ability to come out well on the other side for a country will, of course, depend on how it reacts and proactively manages to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic, to stabilize the situation, and to stimulate growth of the country. For this, macroeconomics is an important fundament, and I'm very pleased to see such a distinguished panel here today, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing the discussion on the outlooks of the macroeconomics of Hungary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas. First of all, let me introduce our panelists. We have András Vértes here, who is the chairman of the GKI Economic Research, and we know each other for quite a long time. Then we also have Dávid Németh as a senior analyst from K&H Bank. And we have Sándor Jobbágy as a senior macroeconomic analyst from Concorde Securities. Unfortunately, we can't see him, but he is with us, and we'll hear him. Unfortunately, due to the firewall at Concorde, they couldn't solve to be seen. So first of all, also I have to send you the regrets of Mr. Jobbágy, who should have been here, but eventually he had something that he couldn't avoid to deal with. So therefore, but we are not left without a very high-level analyst. Therefore, we have Sándor Jobbágy here. So I think this is a great honor for me to moderate such a nice panel and such a professional panel in macroeconomics. I hope I can grow up to this level and ask high-level questions that is of importance for all the audience and the attendees. So I think let's jump into macroeconomics, and I think one of the most popular question during the COVID is that what will be the shape? So what shape of recovery do you expect now? And as the pandemic developed throughout the last 5-6 months, how many times did you change your mind about the shape of the recovery? And what do you think now about the shape? So let's start with András.
Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. And I would like to mention that GKI Economic Research practically do not too much time of expectations in the past months, because our basic idea is that if there will be vaccine against of the drug, in that case, there will be some step-by-step recovery. But without that one, there is no normal position, normal activities. There is a fluctuation longer up and downs without step-by-step in the imitation. So the consumer confidence index in the Hungarian economy is in the past 3 months, in August, September, and October, went down, not up, but went down, which shows that the population is not too so the population is don't think the population that there will be quick position, quick normalization in the next months.
Okay, Dávid, how many times did you change your mind?
Not too many times, and thanks for the invitation. We came out with our figures at the beginning of April. That's how we see the future in this year and next years. And immediately we had the view that this crisis will be quite deep, and because of the lockdowns and the risk of the second wave or even third wave of the pandemic, at the beginning we were very pessimistic, much more pessimistic than anybody in the markets, meaning that regarding Hungary, in the baseline scenario, we forecasted 8 to 9% recession for this year, and only a gradual increase in next year, a rebound, but a gradual rebound for next year. And immediately we had the optimistic and pessimistic scenarios as well, but we gave for the optimistic version a very low chance, only 15%, while for the pessimistic 40%. So our forecast were rather towards the pessimistic scenarios. And then at the end of April, beginning of May, we changed our baseline scenario. And at that time, we moderated the recession for this year from this around 8 to 9%, slightly above 6% recession. And since that time, we haven't changed our forecast for this year. But for next year, just last month, a little bit decreased the outlook from 5% to 4.5% because of the slower rebound of the economy. So the shape is definitely that what we thinking about is that there was a fast rebound in the summertime, but now it's slowing down, and now the risk is there that there could be even a W-shaped orbit for the economy, but this is not the base case at the moment. It is for the pessimistic scenario still.
Okay, so you wouldn't go that far that we should have or we could experience a W recession at the moment. You don't
not in the baseline. Not in the baseline. This is the pessimistic scenario for our, but we still give quite a high chance for that, around 40%, 35% of the pessimistic scenario, while 55 is the baseline and quite low the optimistic. So there is a chance, but still not in the baseline.
Okay. Sándor, so what is your worst and best case scenario? And just to start with the shape.
Yeah, there is a big guessing game around about the shape of the recovery. But first of all, I also would like to say good morning and to everyone, and thank you very much for this invitation. And regarding our expectations, at the very beginning, we actually thought that there might be some chance for a real V-shape, and what is our current expectation is that it's going to be a kind of broken V shape, which I like to call a reverse square root. Rather complicated, but if we talk about this shape of the recovery, I believe that it's going to be an almost V shape with a slower and not full recovery, which means that our main scenario is that in Hungary the recession will be between 5 and 6%, and the recovery will not be full recovery next year. So we believe that the growth rate will be between 4 and 5% next year. So this is the baseline scenario, but of course we have to think in terms of several scenarios, and the worst case could be close to 8% recession this year, depending on what is going to happen with the vaccine outlook, which has become a little bit worse, I think, recently. But still, we might be optimistic in this regard, and that's why the growth scenario, the positive growth scenario for next year.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a very short round question, and please just limit your answer in one number. So what year will we reach the 2019 GDP level? András, just a number.
Just the number. GDP -7.
No. In which year will we reach the same level of the 2019?
In 2022.
Okay. Dávid?
Also 22. In the second half, rather closer to the end.
Okay. Sándor?
Yes, I agree. End of 22.
End of 22. Great. I have an interesting question to you, because let's stay with the GDP and the status of the global economy. And I read a very interesting article roundabout in April. And in that article, it was stated that there was never such a huge discrepancy or wealth inequality in the world economy as we experience now. And the same level, they make the comparison that the first 1% of the most the wealthiest people, 1%, so, how much they owe, they compare it to the lowest 50%. So and in this respect, last time we experienced such a huge difference was in 1929. And we all know what happened after 1929. So my question is that, and also I believe that there was anyhow an overheated economy before the COVID. Do you see that we might experience such a huge recession because of this wealth inequality, what we experience now? And I think that the COVID even increased this inequality during the last couple of months. So what do you think about this? Let's reverse it. Now, Sándor, could you please start it?
Well, it's an interesting starting point to compare it with 1929. I think that there is a major difference, and that is that we had 2008 and 9 and the following reaction by central banks with the flood of money, which was just about to be concluded when this new crisis came, and the central banks could easily switch back to this mode, and they will be supported by fiscal policies almost everywhere. So this is a different setup from that big crisis from 2019 or 1829. And the other issue is that I think that in this recession we were in a phase when general expectations just before the COVID-19 were that there will be some slowdown. And looking at investments, capital markets were at their peak everywhere, and everybody was talking about some kind of correction to come. And this was a situation which was definitely made very difficult by the pandemic situation. But I think it's important that we already had some kind of cautious approach that we won't be able to maintain the growth rates and the trends of the previous years. So I think this is the setup for the current situation, and I think that of course it's difficult to say how we will proceed because of the nature of the crisis, which has a starting point not from the economy but from a health issue, but we still believe that most of the specialties of this situation are coming from this source. For example, that many areas of the economy are affected in very different ways, and also that we have a chance of a big rebound once the health issue, the health situation is handled. So for these reasons, we believe that this recession, although not just the recession, I think we have a question about how this will change the behavior of people and economic players. So we can get back to this, but so we believe that we won't get back to entirely to normal, but we can avoid the long-lasting recession.
Okay, so Dávid, what is your point? And also, please refer to the point that isn't it worrying for you that we have such a huge inequality gap between the wealthiest and the poorest?
Yeah, it's a new phenomenon. It's not a new phenomenon. So we are living with this in the last couple of years or decades already, and these are just increasing. But you have seen before this COVID crisis already that in the political area everything changed because of this situation, that this difference is increased, and I think that still. The COVID situation, yeah, it increased further this problem, and the fight between the nations will even be bigger in the next couple of years. Especially, for example, yeah, this Chinese situation that China against US, who can be the leader of the world, what kind of cooperation can made between countries to fight against China, and against this globalization situation, that is it good for the people or not good for the people. So we were facing with this situation already before the COVID, but because of the COVID and the crisis, these topics became more on the surface, and politicians will react on it, and it can. I think I don't think that there will be such a big depression situation that we had in the 20, 30 years at the beginning of the 20th century. But definitely this issue can slow down temporarily the economic growth. So the potential growth level of the economies might be smaller than before this COVID crisis.
Okay, András.
First of all, our mind is very close to yours, because depression in the recent years, in the recent situation, is much less than before, and that's why the difference is important in that one. Our basic idea is that that there will be in some way vaccine drug for creating better situations. So that's why it will not be as long and not will be as deep than before at that time. That's why our forecast, I didn't mention our forecast previously. So our forecast was for this year -7 in GDP, and practically we are now, as our forecast is now as well 7% of -7% of GDP. But in the next year, in 2021, our forecast is +4 in the best case. Maybe there could be worse elements as well, but in the best case, it will be 4%. So there will be some improvement in that sense, certainly, in the next year. It is very close to the IMF forecast, but the difference is that GKI Economic Research started with that -7 for this year, for example, the IMF is much later. So certainly the situation is very tough, very bad, very abnormal, but much less problematic for longer term, because somewhere there will be vaccine against the drug.
Okay, so now you mentioned vaccines, so I think let's step back a bit, and I would like you to evaluate the Hungarian government's measurements against the support, the economic measurements. What happened in April, March, April, May. There is also there are two ways, obviously. So there is the Kurzarbeit and direct supportive system that quite many governments followed, and there is, on the other hand, providing loans and lowering taxes, what mostly the Hungarian government followed. So how do you evaluate this, and which kind of supportive measurements do you think are the most efficient going forward? So now let's start with Dávid.
Okay, so if you look on the government policy at the beginning of the COVID crisis, they emphasized that the budget deficit will be kept quite low. So it's at that time they didn't mention that there will be such a huge spending. They said that it will be around 3%, 3.8% of GDP, and now they are saying that it can be between 7 and 9% of GDP. So there was a big change and shift in their policies. Probably partly it was because at the beginning there was a very nervous market situation, and they didn't want to be in the front line that Hungary will have a very fast public debt increase and financing issues. but rather they're focused on that it's a stable situation. There is no need of high financing need of the country. So I think it was partly just a strategy for the government that at the beginning that there will be low spending, although at the time they also, I think, thought that there will be higher spending. And later on, but we have seen that lots of more than 2,000 billion forint were spent for different programs and purchasing, etc., etc. So I think that which program is better or not better, it's very hard to evaluate at this moment. So I see that, for example, in US, where they could spend lots of money, and if you look back in the last 1 year, the budget deficit of US was more than 15% of GDP. So it's a tremendous high spending, and they just gave money for the households. The Hungarian government had a different story. They rather wanted to create labor jobs for the labor market, and introducing this Kurzarbeit program, etc., etc. So I think that this is at the beginning was quite okay policy, but now we see that within the economy there are huge differences. So there are sectors which are suffering very deeply, while other sectors are quite okay surviving the situation. So now all the policies has been changed the way that, because there is not unlimited money for everybody, so they really have to focus on those sectors which are more in trouble. And still the main point is that that maintain the capacities, maintain the purchasing power of the households, avoid bankruptcies in the micro, small, medium companies or in the household. So now the programs has to be more targeted, and there are debates, discussions about that, how the hotel business can be supported, how the tourists can be supported, etc., etc. But these focused policies are more important in the future to survive the current situation and have a fast rebound of the economy. Because the problem, if there is no support and this pandemic situation won't be solved in the next couple of months, then the trouble will be bigger and bigger. And then at the end, we might facing with a real recession situation when the unemployment rate is jumping, because at the moment still the unemployment rate is low, at least on statistical point of view. But if this pandemic situation lasting longer and longer, then this issue will be more risky for the government.
Okay, thank you very much. András, what do you think about the measurements Hungary made, and if you compare it with the other EU countries, how would you? What grade would you give to the government from 1 to 5?
You know, in the first round, there was a too long hesitation as concerning Kurzarbeit. Hungarian Kurzarbeit was only introduced in 1 month after the German one, for example, one month after of the German. So that's why there was a hesitation. But after that, there was a owner to put money on the owner and to put money for the employees as well. By our analysis, that was a good decision. But now that is finished, so there is no such further activity in that situation. So, you know, it is too early to say that it is bad or good. It will be, at the end, will be, we could really realize that it was good or not. It is an ongoing situation now that there are many parts of the economy which is suffering, and there are many. I fully agree with Dávid. So there are many other parts who is flourishing without any problems. But all in all, if we see the recent situation, I think that Hungary, and not only Hungary, but EU, total EU, maybe total EU, is going to the direction which was in April, May, and June, when there will be very tough, measures to create a better situation as concerning the problems of the drugs, without drugs, and so on and so on. So all in all, now the governments in Hungary, and not only in Hungary but in European Union and in the world, most in the world, not fully, but all in all, are in very tough problem to introduce very strict rules or not. And I think that in European Union there will be the final decision will be that there will be stronger steps than recently.
Okay, Sándor, what do you think about the measurements? How would you evaluate?
I think that it's worth looking at the whole package of different measures and different policies, because monetary policy was quite active in trying to support the economy in this crisis. And I saw a number in an official publication which added up all the support and all measures coming from the central bank activities and the government, and it added up to more than 20% of GDP. So for the first sight, this is a huge reaction from macro policies and huge support. But we also need to look at the other side, which is the actual support, by which I mean the actual boosting of domestic demand, which is unfortunately much less than that, because the fiscal policy measures were many times measures that actually just rearranged parts of the budget, or some measures that were financed by taxes. So there was partly a reshuffling between different sectors, and not just a direct and fresh stimulus to the economy. Actually, I was looking at the central bank calculations for the fiscal impact of the budget, and it is estimated to be 5.1% of GDP. So my view of all of these measures is that their actual supportive impact on the economy is less than the size of all the measures combined, but still I think there was a significant support also from the fiscal side, and I think maybe an even larger support from the monetary policy side through direct support of lending, and also I think it's important that there was the moratorium on different loans, I think, which is a considerable support for both households and the corporate sector, and we could see that several corporates and companies benefited from that, and we might see some form of this measure next year too. So I think this is what we could see from these measures overall.
Yeah, thank you very much. The Hungarian measurements was criticized in a way that the National Bank went up to the limit. So obviously the loan moratorium was coming from the National Bank, and all the big loan provision to all sectors that also came from the National Bank. However, on the fiscal side, we didn't see too much. So we can just reiterate what you said, that the fiscal side might not be enough or might not be sufficient going forward. However, the monetary side was very supportive and very efficient. If we add up all this together and say that, okay, all the big developed and developing countries poured a lot of money into the economy, both through the monetary policy and through fiscal policy, and that reached, in many cases, reached a level of 15–20% of the GDP. It means that we created a lot of much higher indebtedness for the government's budgets. And so what would that mean in the normal world and the basic macroeconomic rules? If we go back to what we learned, it would definitely mean that it will lift inflation in the coming years. How do you think? What do you think about this equality rule going forward, or do you see anything that could deviate the development from inflation? Sándor, could you start, please?
Yes, I think that inflation and inflation risks and inflation expectations are a problem right now in Hungary. If you look at just very briefly the whole world, I think there is a great division between developed countries and emerging economies, because if you look at the US, inflation is not really a problem right now. And if you look at the Eurozone, actually we have the problem of deflation and not inflation, which is too bad for the ECB, but probably it will be supportive for Hungarian inflation. And what we could see this year is that many times the headline inflation rate was close to or above the central bank's, the top of the central bank's target range, around 4%. And at some point or several times, core inflation, which is more or a better indicator of the underlying trend, was even higher than headline inflation, as was the case last time. In September, we could see the headline figure at 3.4%, while core inflation measures were still close to 4%. So inflation is a problem, but I think this is not yet the direct consequence of a ballooning deficit or a ballooning state debt, but it is partly the consequence of the weaker exchange rate, and it has also many other items boosting inflation, like food prices, which we cannot really handle by policy measures, and also we can see that there is a huge volatility in expectations, in inflation expectations. So people and economic players are really unsure about what is going to happen with inflation. And I think these are the big trends, and also there are important one-off issues like the behavior of economic players right now in this COVID-19 situation. We could see that there were actually several price hikes in areas where economic players thought that they can push prices higher because of a special supply and demand situation, and we could see that prices were actually moving up during the summer, which is quite unusual, and economic players were making many repricing decisions, which they normally wouldn't do during the summer. So there is, I think, a significant uncertainty because of this new kind of pricing behavior from economic actors during the summer because of the COVID. And we need to see how this develops. And in the long run, what we could expect is that we are in a deflationary environment with regards to our Eurozone environment, and this could eventually help and keep inflation down. And just one more thing very briefly is that regarding the central bank's policy, they are in a quite difficult situation because they need to boost the economy, which requires, among others, that they need to keep interest rates at low level, but at the same time, inflation risks at some point require higher interest rates. So this is a kind of dilemma for the central bank. So far, they are trying to solve it by boosting the economy with direct measures, as we talked about, these lending measures and the moratorium, which helps. But still, we have the inflation risk. So this is a tough situation in terms of inflation. But with regards to our forecast, we don't expect that inflation would fly away and skyrocket next year. So we expect, in terms of the average inflation rate, we expect something similar for next year. As we could see for this year, which will be something around 3.5% on average.
Thank you, Sándor. I still, please, the remaining two of us, answer me that question: that how is it that that the money supply increased so much and the budget deficits increased so much, and we don't expect inflation going forward, especially in the developed world? So how can you explain that? Dávid, maybe can you start?
Yes, of course. So it's definitely a question which we examined in the last couple of months. And the question is really that what is the difference now compared to what we have seen in 2010-11, when at that time also the central bank started their quantitative easing program, bought lots of assets from the banking sector, lots of assets from the government bonds on the public sector, and still we didn't face with any inflation. Rather, a couple of years before, there was still a deflation situation, and everybody was fighting for having just a little inflation in developed countries. And now the question is the current situation is different compared to that one? Why should we see now higher inflation? And probably the answer is that the risk is higher now for acceleration of inflation than at that time, because what happened in 2010-11, that the banks, the national banks central banks bought lots of financial assets from the banks, which was not which were close to bankruptcy situation. So they solved and they have the financial system at that time, and this money fully remained within the financial system, and it went to the equity markets mainly, and other assets classes. And probably now, with this very heavy spending of the governments, that they are giving directly money for the households, and the households are spending this money, then the question is that, is it driving inflation higher or not? Probably yes, but probably not, because without this help, the households won't be able to maintain their consumption. So without that, definitely there would be a drastic fall of inflation, or even deflation situation. With this help, the developed country might avoid definitely the deflationary situation, at least. But if you're looking ahead, the problem is now that this very high public debt has to be financed for a very long period. What does it mean? So the central banks have, in my view, two options. They have to financing this high debt and keep going on purchasing bonds. And with it, they are giving, in the next couple of years, lots of money for the economy. Or they let the countries go to bankruptcy. If they are not giving this money for the governments, then the interest rates of the bonds will increase quite fast, and then this high cost of the financing of the bonds would create bankruptcies for the countries. I think this is what the central banks would like to avoid in any cases. So they have only one solution: keep going on buying bonds. And because of the debt is very high, I would say for them it's a lucky situation if they will face with a little bit higher inflation, because then at least the public debt could be inflated a little bit. So that's why I think you can see also a change of the statements of the Fed. For example, that they said that we had a period when the inflation was well below the 2% inflation target, so we can avoid a period when we exceed the 2% inflation for a couple of years. So now you can see that the chance for a slightly higher inflation is there, but I still don't see this very booming inflation. So I don't expect that inflation will go to 5, 6, 7% in the developed markets. Probably in 2-3 years time horizon, if we are really over of this current crisis period and the demand returns, etc., then finally the ECB can also achieve the inflation target, or even luckily a little bit can have a little bit higher inflation as well, which is a problem for Hungary, because Hungary is a different situation. So in Hungary we could have then even higher inflation.
Okay, Sándor, what could you supplement the two others? We have to speed it up a bit, I have to tell you, because we have only 40 minutes left and lots of questions. So
I think András will also have something to say to this, but just very, very briefly, I would like to, because this is a very interesting question. We have a ballooning money supply in the world, and I wasn't referring to this. I was rather focusing on the Hungarian environment, but it's very interesting. We have a ballooning money supply, and still inflation is not moving up, not very much in the US and not at all in the Eurozone, and so the developed world doesn't seem to react. But we also need to see that while money supply is going up to the sky, at the same time the velocity of money dropped significantly. And this is a COVID impact. So it means that transactions and the speed of transactions is much slower this year. There is a huge drop. And we need to see these two things combined when we would like to see the inflation impact. So yes, we have a lot of money circulating around, but at the same time, the speed of money, speed of transactions, the velocity of money is much lower, is at, I think, historical lows. And these two things combined result in just a neutral impact on inflation, and that's why at this moment we don't have a huge inflation in the developed world.
András?
Yes, it is very tough situation. In my understanding, inflation will be the most important enemy in the next decade. Definitely, not only in Hungary, so everywhere, because the problems are different in Hungary, European Union, and the world certainly. But all in all, this situation it shows that there are many abnormal actions in this time, which is certainly connected with the problems as concerning the conflict. But all in all, in the next 10 years, there should be actions creating much more actions against inflation.
Okay, thank you. A very short question, and as just agree or disagree. So based on this, what you just said, András, quite many analysts expect that if you want to choose what asset type would you invest in, they refer to the stock exchange, to real estate, and maybe to precious metals. So do you agree or disagree with this? András, now, what do you think?
Yeah, disagree.
Disagree? Dávid?
I rather agree.
You agree?
Yes.
Okay, so one disagree, one agree. So let's decide, Sándor, please.
It's always difficult to be last in this row. I would rather agree. I'm not fear of huge inflation, but I would rather agree.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to speed up the answers, please, because we really have some running out of time. But there is another very important question about unemployment rate. So we see that in many countries with the supportive measures, and not in Hungary with the low moratorium, we practically hide the real problems going forward and the real number of unemployment. So what do you expect when all these measurements are lifted in the developed countries and also in Hungary after the end of Q2 next year? So what employment rate do you expect in Hungary and in the world as an average practically? Dávid, did you start?
Yes. I'm not very negative regarding the unemployment rate, but again, it highly depends on the pandemic situation. As I at the beginning said that if it's lasts longer, then the unemployment rate will be even a bigger problem. But at the moment, it looks like that there could be a vaccine made around the first quarter of next year, and then this virus situation can be solved in the second half of next year. In that case, I don't think that the unemployment rate will be extremely high, definitely higher than the current one. So in case of Hungary, it can move up to 5 point something percent. In the southern European countries that are in more trouble. So it's again, there are huge differences between the countries, because those countries who are more dependent on the tourism, more dependent on the restaurants and this kind of services, there are more in trouble, so that the unemployment rate might be much higher than compared to those countries where this office works dominated, or some industrial production is more relevant, etc., etc. So that's why we see in the southern European countries a higher unemployment rate, and might see higher unemployment rate than, for example, in the region. And also it highly depends on the demographic situation. So, for example, in Hungary, what we see that the working ages group is decreasing very fast in these years, and rather there is lack of labor force, and I think that Hungary will rather facing in the next couple of years with employment problems, that there is not enough labor force, and not that the unemployment rate is high. While in other countries, like other emerging countries where the population is booming and there are lots of young people, there could be more an issue that the unemployment rate levels.
András, what do you think about unemployment?
Before the pandemic, the Hungarian unemployment was 3.2, 3.3, which is very, very, very low in European sense and in every senses. Certainly it increased roughly 5%, the recent unemployment rate, and certainly there are some problems in that, but all in all, I fully agree with Dávid that not the unemployment is the most important question now in Hungary, because there are many possibilities. For example, in the non-registered activities, certainly there are many elements. So that's why unemployment rate is for example, in the next years will go down by our forecast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Sándor?
I agree with the forecast that suggests that we could have lower unemployment rate next year than what we have this year at the top. For a short period, probably we could expect higher unemployment rate, because I think there is a lag in unemployment, because due to the COVID and probably some other factors, we can see that there is a slowdown in the registration of unemployed people. So probably we will see more unemployed people in the months ahead, but we also expect that the situation would improve next year. And I also agree that the situation is very diverse if you look at the whole world. But what is very important that not only in Hungary, but in the entire region, we arrived to this year's situation, this COVID situation, with a lack of labor, actually, as Dávid also mentioned. So this is a kind of special situation, and probably also prevents a much higher jump in unemployment.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, what do you think? Will we go back to normal at all once the world wins against the pandemic, or there will be certain things that will prevail moving forward, and it can be positive, negative. So what do you think, András?
I don't know. If we analyze the situation, lower household consumption could be one important element. The public and private sector certainly will not in the same side. Recession. I don't think that there will be recession in Hungary. It is out of normal life. But all in all, certainly personal real income in this year will shrink by 1-2% by our forecast. Real income will be in -1, -2. Public, but in the public sector, in the public and private sector, there will be in 10% decline in the investments, and but it will be temporary, certainly, that it will go up by our forecast. It will go up by 3%, 3-4% in the next year. So it will be a temporary downturn, and our forecast as concerning the consumption is -2.5 for this year and plus 4% in the next year. So all in all, it shows a much worse situation than before, but not a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sándor, do you think, I try to be more specific, when we've been against the pandemic, will we have the same number of flights in the world, the same tourism comes back, and we will have the same number of Airbnb nights sold in Budapest, for example, or maybe there will be a paradigm change going forward, and these business models will not work as efficiently as beforehand. So what do you think about that? Will we go back to normal if that was normal before the pandemic?
Well, I believe, of course, it's very difficult to say, but I believe that in many areas of our life and our economy, we are not going back to normal entirely. For example, the areas you mentioned, tourism and similar areas like flights, for example, we already see that the situation, the market is not going to be the same. For example, we for investment purposes, we cover some airlines here at Concorde Securities, and we can see that many airlines, or most of the airlines in the world, are kind of building down and shrinking their activity, while some of these low-budget airlines, like Wizz Air or Ryanair, they are trying to go ahead, trying to expand and prepare for the return of normal. And they buy new planes, and they buy new slots at the airports to be prepared for the flood of tourism next year, for example. So there are different strategies of companies, and this is one reason why we are not going back to normal, because in several sectors of the economy, competition will change, the situation of companies will change, but also the behavior of people, I think, will change. In tourism, many people are just waiting the vaccine and just want to rush and travel again. But I think this is not going to be entirely general. So probably young people will be more willing to get back to normal in terms of tourism, while older people will be, and not just older people, but people who are more at risk in a pandemic situation, they will be probably less willing to get back to normal in terms of tourism, in terms of Airbnb and flights and several other areas.
Okay, so you expect that maybe the demand will shrink for these consumption economy business models. That's what you're saying. So there might be some sort of effect of that.
Yeah, I think several changes will appear. Yes.
Okay, Dávid, could you supplement shortly what just Sándor told us?
I would, yeah, I agree with this, and always a question of what is normal and not normal, and was it a normal situation or not. But for example, which was missing, that in the office buildings, how it will change this this home working situation, part-time job working situations, how it will change. And it is a very important topic because lots of services are linked to the office building. So if there are less people in the offices, then probably there will be, I don't know, less gyms at the office buildings, etc., etc. So less restaurants and these kind of things. So I think that these developments already started before the COVID, but because of the COVID, this digitalization accelerated. Home office is more in the focus, and it's working. So I think it will be used more in the future than before the COVID, and it also creates changes in the whole business models.
Okay, thank you. Now let's move to another topic, which is globalization. So after seeing the supply chain difficulties and problems, will we see the same level of globalization after we won against the pandemic? Or companies will prepare for more secure, though more expensive production or assembling? So do you see that the big multinational companies will move out of China, for example, and the Middle East and come to the Eastern European countries for more assembling and production? And will we be a winner of this in Hungary? Or who would be the winners of this change, if this change will emerge afterwards? So let's start with András now.
There was a KPMG survey a few days ago, and definitely in that survey we can see that home office will be definitely a new element in the next years. Digitalization will be definitely one element, and there will be many questions there will be many changes as concerning home office, new place to do everything, and there will be learn to work in new environment. As concerning the, for example, as concerning the Hungarian situation for example, how to say, so for example, in Audi will be in Hungary in the next years altogether. May I say, it's a unclear situation. For example, as concerning the Mercedes plant at Kecskemét. Okay, it is, but maybe the new action will not be in the next years. And I personal idea that, for example, the Debrecen plant of BMW will not be in the next years. You know, definitely the companies, the big companies in the world would like to be on the much more safe side with spare parts and with all other elements, and that situation will touch Hungary as well. Not too much. There will be positive elements because China is much farther than Hungary. So some spare parts maybe will be in Hungary, will be prepared in Hungary. But all in all, we will have problems as concerning some actions which I mentioned, for example, the BMW or Mercedes action.
Okay, Dávid, what do you think about will we be winners or not?
I think it's an opportunity, but partly yes, partly not. So I think that everything will come to the Central Eastern Europe because of what we already have seen, that many of this production went to Vietnam or Indonesia or these other countries in that region, or even to India can be a target in the future. So still, for the big multinational companies, if they can reach cheap labor force, then they would like to achieve cheap labor force. Probably the focus will be less on China and more in other countries. But we already have seen lots of investments in Hungary and in the region. So the region is very liked by the multinational companies in the last couple of years. And I think that also there is a shift in the region, that more and more R&D centers are also created in the region. So it is a positive opportunity that not only these assembly lines, which we can fight for, but also for service centers, for R&D centers, etc., etc. But definitely, as I said before, the risk is that there won't be enough labor force for it. So education is very important for that perspective, that how you can support this kind of development. And I really emphasize always that now for Hungary is not the target to get the cheapest job, but the more value-added part of job, because we have to step on the next level. We had this level in the last couple of decades, but now we have to move forward and put more emphasis on that kind of investments. And I think that there is really an opportunity for it.
Okay, Sándor, will we see the same level of globalization as before the pandemic? What do you think?
If I need to give a short answer, I would say no, and this is because I think that joining the thoughts of András about car production, for example, I think this could be a good example that because it has this kind of production has physical elements, this might be less. And similar sectors in the economy might be less global and more regional. And on the other hand, a lot of tech companies, like the big US tech companies, could maintain a similar level of globality even in the current situation or after the pandemic. So this situation will change sector-wise, but in several important sectors, I think we will see less global economy all over the world.
Okay, I would like to leave the last 10 minutes for questions from the audience. So we have like 4 minutes left. So please try to give short answers on this question. And this is about the EU. So experiencing the fragmented and non-synchronized measurements made by the European countries, what do you expect regarding the future of the EU? Will this pandemic help to realize that we have to be more united and more synchronized in decision making and more cooperative, or will it rather be the opposite and rather having nations with some common interests? So what do you think about this? András, I think it's rather your area?
You know, Eurozone budget deficit will be very big in the next years, definitely. It is very not to be together is very risky. But you know that Eurozone that the Eurozone from my point of view, to be out of Eurozone, it's a bad situation for Hungary. So, in my understanding, it would be in the next years to join to Eurozone and to be in much more safe position in that one. But certainly it needs many changes in Hungarian policy and in Hungarian political life.
Okay, Dávid, really shortly. So, do you see that we will be more united after the pandemic?
I don't think so that it will happen so fast. So it didn't happen in the last decades. I don't think that there will be a very fast shift. This nationalization thing is still going on. Yeah, this common bond issuance, it's a very important point of the European policy. We see that it can help for deeper integration, but still we see that different nations want different things from the European Union. So I don't think that we will see in 5 years time horizon and united nation of European Union. So it's no.
Okay, so you don't believe in that. Sándor, no. Will we be closer to each other or not?
I believe yes. I don't think that I agree with Dávid that united Europe is not in the near future. But I think that this COVID situation and the necessity to have a bigger common European budget will push European countries towards more integration. So I think it will happen because of a kind of external push from this pandemic situation.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have 10 more minutes. I have plenty of more questions, so no problem if the audience doesn't have any. But Tibor, could you please help? Do you see that anyone raised hands and would like to ask a question?
No questions currently.
No questions. I still would like to push ones to have questions. But then, since we have quite limited time, and I think some of us is interested very much in the Hungarian forint. So, how do you see the strengths of the Hungarian forint? Is it because everyone is experiencing that it's weakening? So, is it weak? I read your article, Sándor, in the portfolio. So is it weak or is it not? What do you expect? There was a question from the members that will we see €300 per half in the 1-2 year horizon, or we will see 400 first? So Sándor, could you please start with the half?
Yeah, of course there are a lot of open questions here, but I definitely believe that we are not going to get back to 300 because what I can see is that this is not the long-term trend. So when I say that my baseline scenario is that there is an ongoing weakening trend of the forint, I believe that there is no return to 300 visible right now. But I also believe that this doesn't mean that, okay, today we are 362, next month we will be 370 and then 380 and so on. I don't expect that. Just to state it very briefly, what I believe is that there is an underlying weakening trend, and this can be very nicely modeled also with interest rate differentials versus the EU and other economic fundamentals. And on one hand, and on the other hand, there is the low interest rate policy of the central bank, and this gives a fundamental weakening path for the forint. This year, of course, is a special one because of the COVID-19 and because of the recession, and these two factors added very much to the weakness of the forint. And that's why it's much weaker than what we could see at the beginning of the year when we had 330 or something in euro-hub terms. So what we basically believe is that these factors that we could see this year will be priced out when we would see a vaccine, or if we would see a vaccine. I don't know how this will arrive and how fast this will arrive, but probably at some point. And this will support the forint. This will support the global market situation. And also, if we could see that there will be a significant economic improvement next year, that will also support the forint. So for the short term, we expect that some positive correction should come. But this, in my view, would not break the long-term weakening trend of the forint.
Okay, thank you very much. Dávid, what do you think? Shortly, please, because we have a question. So
yeah, I agree. I have the same view that fundamentally there is no chance for gradual depreciation of the currency. In the short run, some stabilization may come, but the market is very volatile and depends on the market sentiment and the pandemic situation.
Okay, András, shortly.
I agree. I expect a small depreciation in the next months, but not higher than 370 or some 307. No, 370. Be up. So in between 360 or 7. In between.
Okay, thank you. So it means that the Hungarian forint actually is not weak. So it's in a normal depreciation level. So it's in its.
It is weak, but in accordance with the situation.
Okay.
It's weak, so, definitely weak, but all in all.
Yeah. Tibor, could you please read the question that came from the audience?
We actually have two questions. First, let me put on Ákos, who is going to ask, who raised hands and wants to have a question. Ákos, please unmute yourself and you can ask the question.
Yes, thank you. Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for this great morning session for everyone. My question is towards the first phase of the presentation or discussion is more on the global economy and how EU, the European Union and Hungary can come out of this pandemic. So do you think that this pandemic will allow the EU and Hungary to change towards a more sustainable economic world, economic landscape, and it allows us to have a little bit more focus on the sustainability agenda in terms of industries, in terms of companies? Will it allow us to pull this forward?
Okay, so who would like to answer first?
Okay, I don't think that there will be a massive change. I don't think that there will be the views that the governments had in this topic, that gradual improvement of sustainability will continue. There are lots of costs for the government, so probably the focus might shift gradually to the sustainability, but I don't think that there will be a massive change on this situation. So I don't believe in such a fast change of behavior of the people and the government.
Okay, I suggest that the other two please only comment if you disagree in some point, or that's very important because we have another question from the audience. So would you like to supplement it, András or Sándor?
No.
No.
I mostly agree. So I think this is also supported by the capital market situation, where more sustainable companies are more attractive on the stock market in the US, but in Europe, it is financing and the support of companies is less dependent on the stock market. So this also supports that no fast change will likely to appear in this regard, as Dávid said.
Okay, thank you. So Tibor, could you then...
Difficult time, no change.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Could you please read the other question?
Yes. Question was about pandemic. How much and which way would be the Hungarian health system be impacted by post-COVID period? And the supplement question, what is the expert's opinion about the government's steps to make changes in the healthcare systems, stakeholders, etc.?
Sándor? Can you start with you?
I'm not sure if I understood the first part of the question correctly. So it was about the healthcare system and how it would change.
How the COVID pandemic impacted the healthcare system in general, and what's it going to cause in the post-COVID period?
Well, of course, again, this is difficult to say, but what I definitely expect that it would be more flexible, and the healthcare system was given more focus. And of course, we could see as the latest development that salaries are about to rise in the healthcare system. So we need to look at if this is going to be more aligned with the importance of this sector in the future. But definitely, this is the direction what I can see that we are moving towards.
Okay, thank you. Do you have other opinions, András, Dávid, regarding this?
I fully agree that in the next 10 years, there will be basic changes in the healthcare system.
Good. Dávid, last sentence.
It's for me interesting that we'll be able, the government, solve this structural issue of the healthcare system, that how the public and the private is linked together and can separate it, make it more clearer. But yeah, it's a very interesting and important topic.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, really thank you for
Sorry,
answering.
One more question arose. No? Let's take him back.
I don't know if you can take it. Do you have 5 more minutes, maybe, for one more question?
Okay.
Sure.
The hand was pulled back, so no more questions.
No more questions. Thank you very much. So, first of all, thank you very much for the panelists that they came out digitally to this panel discussion, and with the valuable words we heard. Unfortunately, I have several questions that I had to hold back because of the time frame. But maybe next time, if there will be next time, I hope all the audience liked this macro panel discussion. And also, I would like to thank you, attendees, that you were with us and you listened to us. So I thank you very much for your attention. And maybe, Thomas, would you like to round down the panel discussion with some closing words?
So again, thank you very much, András, Dávid, Sándor, for a fantastic panel. It was very encouraging to hear that you were all aligned on the fact that in 2022, we will be back on track again in terms of GDP. Dávid, I hope you're wrong. I hope it comes earlier in 2022 than at the back end of it. But of course, I also love the discussion on the new normal and what the normal in the future will look like. Here is where I'm sure we will see innovation take us to the next step in terms of being able to innovate business models, think differently. We already see that in the digital space. We're almost all online without any challenges, and I'm sure this will be a long-standing footprint on the way that we're going to do business for the future. So again, thank you very much. And Péter, thanks for great moderation and management of the whole meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.